it actually amazes me how they have that want, that eagerness to actually want to learn more. So when we give halaqas, when we give talks on purpose of life, like your studies is not your main aim of you living. When they actually got to know this, they start wanting more, they start asking more questions.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Nurin Alifah Amani. So I'm from King's College London, currently studying biomed. And
And I'm Nurul, a final year biomedical science student as well. I'm currently studying at University of Warwick.
So, Alhamdulillah, thank you for coming guys. So, today, kita nak cakap pasal the rise of the Muslim youth in the West, right? So, kenapa kita pilih tajuk ni in the first place?
I think with the current ongoing situations that's happening in the world, the wars and the conflicts, and technically in Palestine, Syria, Uyghur, Sudan, technically all the Muslim countries that are being oppressed, this is the most important time for us to actually talk about what's happening, and for the youth to actually start and also continue being actively participating in the change of what's going to happen in the future. So we could see that there is a shift in how the youth is in the West, like them being actively participating and trying to actually make those changes compared to other countries across the globe. So there is this rise of the youth in the West that we should talk about. Yep.
this session would be our mainly observations and our experiences from things that we participate and our friends that are actively involved in the community. So I believe there's a lot for us to reflect upon and for us to learn together on how powerful youth could be in terms of changing and speaking up their voices and making the world hear that message.
Interesting. So, probably like from your point of view kan, macam being like dah lama dekat UK ni sendiri. So, what kind of like changes do you see in terms of like Muslim youth and like Islamic society, things like that?
Mm, I think we should start with like the Islamic society itself, and the difference in like how the Muslims are here compared to where we came from, which is Malaysia. So when I first started, it was quite amazing to me when the Muslims that and like went to the prayer halls and actually involved in Islamic society events. It weren't like they weren't people who would like cover all their auras. It's like the typical conservative Muslims that are the only ones being in the Islamic society, but you can see the wide ranges of people who don't really give that boundary of, oh, you're not fulfilling the characters of a Muslim, so you shouldn't be in this place of worship. But we can see that they have that courage as Muslims to actually be part of the society and actually actively show that they are Muslims, even though they like everyone it lacks is lacking, right? As a Muslim. So we can see that there is no macam
Discrimination.
yeah, discrimination against, oh, you tutup aurat ke tak and semua tu, and like it's very healthy lah, I would say, because it will give a chance for those who wants to improve to actually learn and also improve. And because coming from Malaysia as well, you wouldn't see this, because orang yang pergi actively with like Muslim society semua tu is like orang yang actually fulfill all the characteristics of Islam or whatever not lah. Do you have any more to
And I
say?
think the difference is that we do have stereotypes that we set in our society, but it's unspoken. So it's like if you're joining this kind of Islamic groups or activities, you are totally like Islamic. But then in here, I think they are more open with that. If you're a Muslim, then you're just a Muslim, regardless you're struggling or you're striving with some issues or you have that struggles in obeying things, but we are all together and we can learn together to improve ourselves as a Muslim. So that's the very huge and widely the accepting community that they have, especially in Islamic society. And surprisingly, I think after I've done like a lot of research about them, because I always intrigued and amazed with the structure and how active the Muslim society are. So they actually have the Islamic societies are governed by the Federation of Islamic Society in universities, so it's called like FOSIS in this country. And diorang punya macam the federation ni memang govern that society and give funds, provide mediums for them, help them in planning what to do in terms of dakwah, in terms of charity activities to support other Muslims and community as a whole. So they do like Open Week, Charity Week, Discover Islam Weeks, and all of these are on the basis of Muslims, and everyone can actively join, contribute, take part. So that's a very big thing to see among youth in the West, Muslim youth in the West.
All right, so we talk about forces being very structured and they're operating in such a big scale, okay? So from your point of view, what do you think like the impact that they give and why do you think they're able to do such a change?
I think with Forces foundation as well is actually to bring about that Muslim identity. And I think being raised and being born and raised in the West actually shapes you into a, a person that actually want to make your Muslim identity um,
Stronger than
stronger,
anything else.
like people can see you that you are a Muslim. And I think with that foundation, like being the minority in the Western countries, you are raised to want to talk about your identity as a Muslim. So I think coming from that foundation, forces, and like the Islamic Society has given them so many opportunities for them to actually grow as a Muslim and for them to experience dawah, for them to experience giving back to the Muslim community and wanting to bring others with them to be like as a Muslim and like to introduce them to Islam and everything like that. So I think with having that experiences of, oh, I want to do this for the ummah, for the Muslim community, when this when this war had happened in Palestine, they start to realize that we do need to make an impact as well. We do need to bring that change as youth because technically we are the voices of the country that is actually giving so much aid to the war, to the enemy. So when they had these thoughts, the encampments already like happened, and it started by non-Muslims actually. But you can see the shift. Like it started with non-Muslims wanting to voice out their opinions to human rights, and then when the Muslims wanted to join in, there were like being an ISOC member itself, like being an ISOC exec. You can see that there were like two opinions on whether they wanted to stand with Palestine, as in like protests and encampments and all of those. Um, so there was a bit of a delay in wanting to join all of these movements that is happening. But Alhamdulillah, like they were able to like come to a conclusion that we do need to follow the Quran and Sunnah. Like your base of wanting to do what you do is not just because everyone else is doing it. It's not to free Palestine, but to actually get back the Palestinian rights and to actually go with the to solve the underground roots, the roots of what is happening. So even
Which
though
is the basis of faith itself. Right?
yeah, exactly, which is the basis of faith. So knowing that, oh, it was started with just human rights punya wanting to solve a human rights issue. It goes back to, oh, wanting to fix the Islam and like the faith within the community and also what's happening over there. Like it brings about many communities together, tapi like they want to follow what foundation, what source. So that needs to come back to Islam, Quran, and Sunnah. So when the Muslims knew about this, like when they started realizing this, they wanted to bring that changes. So it's not like they just realized it and like did nothing. So they wanted to bring about that changes, which led to like Muslims wanting to be more and be more actively participating in these encampments, protests.
True. And from our experiences, ourselves, we did join this one like Palestinian conference where they discussed about the like principles and where are the boundaries of doing all these encampments based on the Sharia, based on the Sirah, and that is a very great advocate even for the Muslims itself, because we don't want to be silent in addressing this whole genocide on the base of ummah and our akidah. So the akidah itself is the main pillar of this whole thing that is happening for us to understand, and that is why the Islamic Society are doing that, and that is the thing that they are trying to advocate for us Muslims, yang kita join the encampments, kita speak up and we raise up our voice for the sake of Islam, and that is our first qiblah, that is our holy place of where our akidah started, and Baitul Maqdis itself is a promised land that Rasulullah dah bagi tahu and all that kan. So I think their foundation of doing that is very strongly Islamic, and the main part of it is to uphold our faith from the very start, and more than just humanity lah. So those are the things that they did discuss, and they did make movements to bring change up to a point where they like do all the macam coalition where they try to like be with like make peace with another group, and on what basis we are doing that, based on the Sirah and stuff like that. There's a lot of discussions like going on within that Islamic Society in order for them to bring change. And I think based on my experience myself, I did participate in sort of public policy activity where they like discuss how are the future going to be as a policymakers kan, being a Muslim and policymakers in this country. So they obviously macam like Nurul said now kan, about how they were raised themselves in the West, being minority, and the only identity you want to bring is Islam. Because if you're not Islam, if you're not a Muslim, then what else you want to be? Because there's only two, macam Muslim dan kafir. And that's why the Muslim society and their identity as a Muslim is very strong here. Up to a point when they're navigating their future, being a public policy maker, being the one in charge of the system, they do address these Islamic issues, and they try to implement the Sharia law in the system, so that Muslims are not being oppressed anymore, because they are global power and they are aware of that. So they are aware that they have the power to invest in weapons, in the genocide itself, which is very directly associated kan. So amazing lah how the changes and the discussions that they are doing is because they are aware of that, because they have the power to actually aware what how is this global power works. So sebab tu diorang boleh bincang benda tu, and they are trying to bring that movement, bring that changes within the Muslim community, and that's how all the things started. That's how the encampment started. That's how the like confrontations of Sharia law and the civil law started to bring into to be brought into the table for them to discuss lah.
I think realizing macam I think the youth here actually understands like their voices actually matter compared to like coming from Malaysia itself. Like I don't think our youth realize how much power our
yeah.
voice actually brings up to the government. So I think knowing that your voice actually matters, they are trying to be actively involved in trying to change how the system works. That they've been brought up with that system, but now they realize, okay, that system is not how we should follow, because it is leading to all of these people dying.
Yeah.
So even with like the encampments, the stand with Palestine, even though like it started with non-Muslims, even though like there were so many different opinions of how should we go about with these encampments, these protests, they are now, alhamdulillah, like trying to, Islamic societies are trying to shift their perspective on how would we actually do this as a Muslim,
Mm-mm.
and how do we want to bring about change as a Muslim.
Mm-mm.
So we don't want to just or like a few Muslims going into the stand with Palestine, but we want the whole community to actually understand,
Mm.
like, this is what we need to do as
Mm-mm.
Muslims based off the Sirah, based off the Quran and the
Mm.
Sunnah. So when we went to the Palestine conference, like, the speaker was giving a lot of dalil,
Mm-mm.
like evidence of why they're doing what they're
Mm-mm.
doing,
Mm-mm.
which changed our perspective as well. Especially, like, I thought they were like going with like non-Islamic
Mm-mm.
values, tapi
Mm-mm.
macam when I went to the conference itself, I was like, okay, I wasn't expecting that.
Mashallah.
Mashallah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so we talk about upholding this Muslim identity and knowing ourselves as a Muslim, kan? So what do you mean by Muslim identity, and what does the Quran or Sunnah says about this?
Okay, so to start off the question, I think we need to understand what is identity means and what is the most supreme identity that we want to uphold first. Because we do have a lot of identities. Like we can address ourselves as a student, we can address ourselves as a Malaysian. We come here to study, and we do have other roles in this life. Like we're a child to our parents. Yeah, there's a lot. But above all, what we need to understand, the supremacy of identity that we have is actually being the slave of Allah, being a Muslim, and obeying what Allah said is the first thing that we want to put above everything else. So in terms of the movement, the change that they are doing, I think that is the drive that they understand but we didn't, especially in addressing the oppression, when we witness evils, when we witness all the destructions that are happening in this world. I think Muslims in the West, I'm not generalizing all, but they do have that paradigm of seeing and navigating this issue. And I think in one conference that we went to about the Palestinian conference, addressing about what they did, and what are their discussions in the meetings of um, what movement that we want to bring to the university community. They do address about a hadith in talking about what do we do when we see evil or oppression. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadi, fa illam yastati' fa bilisani, fa illam yastati' fa biqalbi, wa dhalika adhaful iman." So whoever of you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. And if he is not able to do so, then let him change with his tongue. Or if he is not able to do so, then with his heart. But that is the weakest state of faith, weakest state of iman. And I think even me myself, before I went to all those events, and before I start to mingle with them, start to talk to them, I do think that, oh, maybe about the Palestinians, it's been years. It's been like 76 years of history, and it was very long. And I thought maybe praying is just the best thing that I could do. But then when seeing them, realizing their roles as a Muslim and trying to do their best in putting all their wills and power to the table and to the society, that is way beyond just praying. And I think maybe one of it is we don't have enough courage to do that, and we don't have strong support and understanding on why we need to do that. So I think elaborating more upon the hadith, they do understand, and they did try to do beyond just praying. For example, that's why the Muslim Islamic Society, for example, when the socialist or communist society started the encampments, for example, even though it wasn't based off Akidah, but it actually moves the Muslims and make them sit down and think what we need to do as a Muslim, because it is our brothers and sisters anyways that are being killed and being oppressed in Gaza and every other places in the world. So this is more than just boycotting and more than just saying silent. So that's why we need to do something more aggressive, and be brave enough to do that, which that is the power that is very impactful that they did For example, they go out and then protest and then advocate people in their activities, for example, Charity Week or Muslim Discover Islam Week, like how all these events in the history started based on Islam, and it is actually the confrontation between Islam and kafir in kufar, which is very big. And then they do involve in negotiating the university higher ups, for example, in pushing them to divest from providing funds to the Zionists, to the Israelis, in terms of weapons, in terms of research and developments, because they witness that. We are all in the prestigious universities and we do have power to witness that. And it is actually happening. Our universities are actually funding the genocide, collaborating with the US, collaborating with all the global powers that exist against that people of our blood, our akidah, in Palestine and all other places. So this is the realization that drives them from the very first place, being the slave of Allah, and what Allah says, what Allah's rules is the most supreme, and that is what we want to uphold first compared to every other things, which leads them to try and do more in every single sides of their lives.
I think you touched on a very important aspect of the organizational aspect of how the Muslims are acting with the current war that's happening and the ongoing situations. And it's also important for us to also look back on the spiritual side, on how they are also trying to improve as Muslims and actually use the basis of Islam and how they nurture themselves as Muslims to use that in the movements that they are doing. With the hadith that you also talked about, where the lowest level of iman is literally hating it with the heart, but they, alhamdulillah, like they have this realization that they don't want to be doing things like their iman to be shown as the lowest level, and actually go on to the next steps and do your da'wah and actually impact others by their tongue as well. So having the opportunity to do da'wah in like Islamic Society Dawah Week or Discover Islam Week, where they do dawahs and introduce non-Muslims or Muslims understand more about Islam. It's a whole week of actually telling people about Islam. And also with the encampments, the protests, it's also a mean of you influencing others about Islam and how you behave as a Muslim. And we have seen that in our encampments in universities that this actually does work. Like you can see that non-Muslims actually being preached into Islam because of the characters that we actually uphold according to the Quran and the Sunnah, which is amazing and which should be used as you in your youth. And I think we don't understand the importance of this enough as those who weren't brought up in the West. And when they realize their power as youth and their voices, they actually use it to the best of their abilities, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so we talk about the meaning of being a true Muslim and knowing the impact that we have with the da'wah, with the changes in the nation level. So now, moving forward, the real question is, what do we do? Like, what is our role? Like, what should we do now moving forward as a Muslim?
Interesting question. I think we really do need to go back on the literal basics of Islam. Like, why were we actually created on this earth? Like, I've seen a video where Malaysians were asked on what their purpose of life is, and the answers would be like, oh, to make my parents happy, to eat, and like things that would be too trivial for you to make that as your purpose of life. So we need to go back to the fact that we are the slave of Allah with the ayah, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. He did not create jinns and humans except, I did not create jinns or humans except to worship Allah. So that goes back to the fact that we are, every single one of us are servants of Allah. And also the fact that وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. We were created on this earth also to become the Khalifullah. So like understanding your purpose of life will actually move you to do things according to what Allah actually wants us. So like I think the youth here, when they understand that, you can see that their movements is not just outwardly, but even within the ISOC community itself. Me being in ISOC for the past 4 years as well, we can see that their keenness and their eagerness to actually understand the Quran and the Sunnah, like I it actually amazes me how they have that want, the eagerness to actually want to learn more. So when we give halaqas, when we give talks on purpose of life, like your studies is not your main aim of you living. When they actually got to know this, they start wanting more, they start asking more questions. So we want this eagerness to actually be sparked into each and every one of us, to actually go back to the basics of Islam and understand why we were created, so that we can follow those basics.
True. And adding upon that, I think getting back to learning the Quran and Sunnah, like from the very start of getting to know what is the Quran saying properly, because I believe a lot of Malaysians, especially me myself, I came from a very like religious school, and we do learn a lot about Islam, but sometimes we tend to overlook the full comprehension of what is the Quran saying, and it is actually a lot, because Quran is the greatest mujizat that Allah has ever given to the humankind. And when we truly delve into the message of Quran, it actually unleashes all your potentials within us, within yourselves, because I think life is more than just you be brilliant and you get straight A's in exams, or you like get good degrees. It's more than just that. More than just you get great work and then stable jobs. It's more than just it, because we do have fights in this life, but sometimes because we don't understand the Quran and the Sunnah, we don't really know what to do with that. In fact, those are the weapons and the tools that we have as a Muslim, to use it properly, for the sake of Allah, and that is our form of fight. That's our form of battle that we can do in our state. For especially being Malaysians, and then we are in a very peaceful country, right? And we are all Muslims. We don't have that proper distinguishment of, okay, these are Muslims and these are not, because we are all together. But when we don't know the true purpose of why do we do in this life, that what makes us don't really know how to utilize all the resources that we have. And then I think there's a lot that we can learn from the West, especially because it is very lively to see them. It's very enlightening to see them very strong and proudly claiming they are Islam, regardless their backgrounds, regardless their struggles and hurdles that they have here. Um, and they know where to put Islam in their life, not just mere rituals, not just mere practices that they don't really understand what it means, but they actually can advocate and can talk about it, which is very amazing.
And I think the fact that I think Malaysians have this mentality as well, that technically, because Malaysia is a peaceful country, like we don't really want to get involved in like what is happening at the other end of the world. But we forget that the Muslims in the West actually towards look at the Malaysian
They look up on us.
yeah, they
actually.
look up on us, like
Yeah.
how our politicians work, and as like all the Islamic values, they actually look up to us, like how we would conduct in the society. And we forget that we have that power. We as Malaysians, as Muslims, as a Muslim country, we're the ones who are supposed to be more vocal about what is happening. And we forget that we have that much power, but we're still stuck in a mentality that, oh, it's happening at the other side of the world, we can't stop what we're doing in life, and like our life must go on. But also think about, in your life, do things that at the end of the day, like you have an answer to what, let's say the Palestinians, like what have you done for us.
Yeah.
Like how will you do some acts that actually explain, oh, I've done it for the Palestinians. They're dying at the other side of the world, but what I'm doing is so unnecessary. Like
Yeah.
how will you actually explain to them that we have done our best when we're so into this like dunya stuff.
Yeah.
Like subhanallah, it's just too much.
Yeah. Okay, I think to close this off, we have talked a lot about everything in every sides, from the political sides or the structural sides, organizational sides. At the end, this is about us being a youth. We're all 20s in our best state, prime state ever in our whole life cycle. So I think we need to try to do our best, being the witness of the history. Just imagine, like, you're gonna have kids and then you're gonna say to your kids, I was there in that history of time.
Yeah.
And what have we done? What have we tried to do? What have we tried to advocate ourselves, to learn and to bring awareness to ourselves? And there are actually a lot of means that we do have now. It's just a matter of, are we care enough to try and work on something?
And this is just a disclaimer that whatever we have said is not a generalization on all the Muslims that are in the West, but the people that we have faced, we have interacted with, and were involved in these different conferences, different discussions
Yeah.
in our universities, like King's, Warwick. Like we have very close knitted ISOC, and we've had a lot of discussions regarding of what's happening
Yeah.
and how to actually impact the society with the Muslim identity that we have. So that's just a disclaimer. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's it for us.
Thank you so much.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.